We are rolling. Welcome to another episode of the Living Rewired podcast, an Ape Strong edition with myself and co-host Mikael Yahaya.
What's up?
How are you, bro?
Good, thank you, man. How are you?
I'm good. So today we want to get into the topic of fat loss or weight loss. Weight gain.
Yeah, anything weight related, I think, in regards to the human body and as well as how it's deemed as healthy, unhealthy, or goals as well in relation to that, I think.
There's certainly a lot of unhealthy approaches to losing weight.
Absolutely.
And I reckon it's almost probably the more common approach is the unhealthy one.
Yeah, I think it's very normal for people to just see input and output and seeing their numbers on a scale decrease, and the formula that they may use for that is just to be at a massive calorie deficit and not necessarily hitting other nutritional goals, or maybe not even potentially working out, just maybe just actually having a lack of fuel.
I think, you mentioned that they're not working out there, but you can lose weight without necessarily working out. Because
of course,
if we look at, without getting too deep, too technical too quickly, if we look at weight loss or weight gain, it's essentially going to be looking at your total daily energy expenditure.
Yes.
And when we look at where that energy is being expended from, 70% of that is going to be determined by your basal metabolic rate, which is essentially how much muscle do you have. And then you're going to get about, all the rest of the 30% that's left over. Of course, there's a little bit of variability there, but you're going to get about 10% from the thermic effect of food, so digestion. So your body is actually expelling energy when it is digesting food.
Yes.
You're going to get between 10 and 15% come from your NEAT, so your non-exercise activity thermogenesis, i.e. how many steps per day, even though it's probably not technically your NEAT if it's done deliberately, which leaves us only about 5% left over from your actual workout.
I think that's a really good answer in like its literal term, but I think when it comes to weight loss or weight gain or just looking at weights in general, I think the biggest factor is the reason why, if there's a goal set in place, right? So like for me, I've had to lose weight for competitions depending on when the weigh-in is, right? Will determine how I would lose that weight. And for weight gain purposes, just for like a safer training environment, I think it's important to be a little bit thicker, especially if like you're not having to cut weight or you're not necessarily wanting to be lighter for whatever reason. Maybe you have heavier training partners. And I think I think most people, and I could be just presuming this, but I'm pretty sure for most people I'm speaking to that aren't jiu-jitsu athletes necessarily, they just want to gain weight for the sake of having their numbers go up, or lose weight in the sake of their numbers having gone down. I think that is not the best way to look at it, because I think if your goal is to lose weight for, let's just like, I'm getting married soon, right? Let's say your aim is to lose weight for your wedding.
Is that what you're doing?
No. It's naturally happened maybe from the stress, maybe from not eating so much, or as much. But like we'll just use that as an example. But in regards to that, if let's just say your aim was to look good, does that necessarily mean you have to lose a lot of weight or be at a deficit? Not necessarily, right? Because I think it's quite important to have to work out to potentially look good, or at least in my definition of what looks good, right?
You're definitely going to look better if you are working out as opposed not to, because that's providing the stimulus for the physical adaptation, the composition, if you will. And it's going to raise that basal metabolic rate because of the muscle tissue that you've acquired over the time of your training. So now you've got a bigger calorie bank account every day that you can use, right? And that's the simple of it. The more muscle you have, the easier it is to get lean.
Yep.
That's a really simple way to look at it, and why it's a big reason for all people to invest some time into resistance weight training. But it's interesting you mentioned that about the scales, right? Like a lot of people that sort of have found themselves in the industry or have spent a lot of time in the gym, I will admit to possessing a certain degree of body dysmorphia.
I'm exactly the same.
Yep. And there was a long time where my emotions and decisions were heavily influenced by the scale weight in the probably the opposite direction as what it would with the female brain, right? So if I got on the scale and I was below 90 kilos, that would make me feel like I was shrinking, and I would go to McDonald's and eat 2 double cheeseburgers or 3 just because I thought I was getting small, when the truth is that's not going to be helping me with any of my composition goals, really. It's probably going to make me fatter and perform worse.
Yeah, I had it on the other way around for me doing the big weight cuts. Obviously, like I've been very lean, had like veins on abs and things like that, and like there isn't even an ab on me now. There's just one ab.
You got to be lean to get veins on abs.
Yeah, but that's the thing is though. That's also some of the shittest I've ever felt.
Right? Oh, like, without a doubt.
I feel like my brain's not working. The only thing I can actually do is jujitsu, and a lot of that's also things like sodium manipulation, and that's also just getting the weight down. But the body dysmorphia thing that I had was, I remember if I would, on the way back up, or just if I was even in season but not cutting weight, if like the abs didn't look as good, I'd be like, fuck, I guess I'm not having carbs today, you know, like, and just shit like that. And I have like way more protein, way more fats, and to be completely honest, that suited me as a person. Like, I don't necessarily need a lot of carbohydrates in my diet. I think as I've gotten older, I do. But back when I was younger, I definitely didn't need as much, whether that be like a genetic thing. I never got tested for anything.
What do you mean you need more carbohydrates now?
I just feel like my life is better when I have more carbohydrates now.
Okay, that's fair. I can accept that.
Like I'm an all-round better person. I don't necessarily, I can just function better, I think. But that said, that could be like a lockdown trait I had too, you know? Like maybe if I cut X amount of carbs out and I just focus on proteins and fats, I might be okay still.
Carbs are comforting food.
Absolutely comforting food.
But yeah, it's just been an interesting observation that I feel like a lot of our audience will be able to resonate with, whether it be, you know, one way or the other, whether their dysmorphia being that they're feeling bigger than what they are, or whether they're feeling smaller than what they are. But having sort of transitioned from that, you know, style and relationship with training, when it all was about lifting as much and as heavy and going as hard as possible to try and, you know, accumulate as much muscle tissue as possible, and where that motivation came from, you know, is a deep twisted conversation for another day. But it's still, you know, it's been an interesting journey for me over the last couple of years, and I know some of that's been out of my control when I've had, you know, I've just had my 4th surgery in the last 2 years. So, you know, 2 testicular surgeries, a kidney surgery, and now a knee surgery. So all of those things have obviously compromised my ability to, you know, train the way maybe that I used to at certain periods, and being forced to have breaks off. And it's even probably, you know, definitely it has affected me hormonally. And just, you know, what I'm getting at is that the other day I bought a new piece of clothing for winter, and it is the first time in a long time that I have not bought an XL or a double XL, and it hurt my feelings.
What was the size?
It was a large.
It was it
was still a large.
Yeah, I mean, like, at least you're hitting the mediums, brother.
If I hit the mediums, I'll hit the deck. I will be
You're
gone.
like, my life's good. My life's good. I can just die now.
Exactly. I've had enough if I become a medium.
I've had a good run, team. I've had a good run.
For sure. But that's something that, you know, it's been a little bit of a wrestle, one that I can observe now without getting, you know, actually upset by it. But I can laugh at it, you know. But I think the scales in themselves, because we've talked about the scale a little bit, the scale can sometimes be a bit misleading, and you know, often when I do have female clientele, one of the best, you know, feelings that they find, or the results, is how their old clothes are fitting and they can get back into a pair of jeans or something that they never used to be able to.
Yeah, of course, right? I mean, the whole reason of the scale existing, not even for sporting purposes, is just a quantitative figure of how much do you weigh.
Yeah, it's just a tool.
And in regards to that, depending on how many carbohydrates you have, how much sodium you have in your diet, the water retention, that's going to affect the actual number on the scale as well. But I know people that have body dysmorphia. Well, I think it's body dysmorphia, but to the point where when they want to hop on the scales, they're going to take something like their belt off or their shoes off. And that's just to see a lower number.
Yeah.
But that doesn't actually change the weight that they
It
are.
doesn't change the actual result.
Yeah, and I just wanted to, I guess, talk about that because I don't think that's a healthy way to look at your weight. I think it's like, I think you should, I think it's important to have stress in your life in regards to like working hard and having
Hmm.
these goals. But if your goal is just to see a number decrease, like, sure, it's possible,
Hmm.
but does that necessarily mean that you are better for it?
I know exactly what you mean. I think when you become too emotionally invested in the numerical value of what the scale is telling you, you often bypass the other important factors of how is your energy, how is your mood, how is your performance, how is your libido, how is your recovery, so many other lifestyle factors, and I think on top of that, you mentioned weight fluctuations, and
Uh-huh.
one of those influencing factors may be as simple as carbohydrates, as the name says. So you're going to hold more water with every, depending on glycogen storage and how much carbohydrates you're consuming, right? But even as a woman, right, you're going to have even greater ability to fluctuate depending on where you
Of
are through
course.
your menstrual cycle. So it always depends, and I always preface this with due diligence and a bit of care to understand that person's health history. But because if you're someone who has a history of, some form of body dysmorphia or body orthorexia, and you used to have these obsessive tendencies with the scale, and maybe this is conjuring up negative emotions from the past,
Uh-huh.
then getting yourself on the scale may be maybe a bit bad strategy for you to employ. But as long as that's not you and you're somebody who doesn't feel too emotionally triggered by what that number is, and I think having the understanding and the education of how the body can fluctuate can help mitigate some of that before the fact. But it's actually best if you can do this consistently every day. So waking up in the morning,
Having a log of it.
wake up in the morning on an empty stomach before you do anything, and you weigh yourself and you record it. And then at the end of the week, you take your average of that. And then what we want to see based on your goal, whether it be weight gain or weight loss, is it's a bit like a stock portfolio. It's zigzagging and it's either trending up or down. And then when you look at that weekly average, you can be a little bit less influenced or upset by whatever that daily result is if it isn't what you'd hoped and expected for.
Yeah, I would have a similar strategy if I had to make weight for a competition, especially because for things like worlds and stuff in jiu-jitsu, the weigh-ins are like 5 minutes before the division starts.
Hmm.
So you can cut a massive amount if that is what you want to do. Isn't necessarily the best thing to do, I think, especially I know some people that water load for those things. I think that's quite unhealthy. We'll speak about water loading in a second. But
Yeah, I'm interested to hear how you think that's unhealthy.
yeah, well, yeah, so just going back
Keep
a
going.
step. Um, I would weigh myself in the morning. I'd
Mhm.
weigh myself at night. I'd weigh myself after the training sessions that I had as well, so I knew how much I would be sweating in those training sessions. And I think that is a bit of an obsessive kind of behavior. Even though I logically put it down as I need to log this,
Mm.
and I guess keep track of where I am. I don't think it's like if I could do it all again, I would probably try and get someone professional to do it whilst I'm cutting weight, not me doing it myself to the point where I'd be so hungry, so thirsty, wanting to like earn my meals. I would fast
Mhm.
and I would only eat if I trained. All right, and is that healthy? Maybe, maybe not. I would eat like normal amounts of food as well. It wasn't like I was fucking dying.
Mhm.
Um, but I remember going around supermarkets starving and just being like, when I'm fucking when I'm done competing, I'm gonna eat you. I'm
Mhm.
gonna have that. I'm gonna have that. I don't know. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's sometimes the problem when you do extreme things,
Yeah.
and when you go on these super restrictive type diets where you have to suffer. Um, a- a- like bodybuilding is the perfect example of that. And you see what people do at the end of their competition. They just absolutely blow out with an enormous amount of calories and often get that rebound weight gain. So I think, dieting versus sort of, if you call it, your lifestyle and relationship with food, they're kind of two different conversations. I think,
I think so.
you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
I guess so. Yeah.
What was the sort of weight difference that you found either side of your training?
The Oh, like after training?
Yeah, like did you lose weight?
Oh yeah. I mean, like water weight.
How much
Yeah,
would you lose?
probably a minimum of like 500 grams mils to about a kilo and a half, depending on how hydrated I was going into the session.
Yeah, okay.
That said, though, for me to cut to rooster weight at the time, I was probably walking around at about 63, and no gi weight for rooster weight, which I only did once. I did the gi many more times. Was like 56.5. So
So what's the most weight you've cut then? Like
uh,
5, 6 kilos?
no, I think that like what's that? What's that, like 8 kilos or something?
8 kilos?
Yeah, and I think anything more than 10% is kind of hard. I think like 10% of like a doable amount. But it's the extra couple of kilos on top of that for a same day weigh in 5 minutes before you fight. It's pretty hard, and I would do that over a 6 to 8 week period from memory.
Mm-hmm.
It was interesting though, because of the sodium manipulation, you're kind of like you're not cheating, but you're cheating the scale. You're just trying to be as light as possible. So
Mm.
I'd be at a calorie deficit for 6.5 to 7.5 weeks, and then 4 days out, I would switch my diet completely. So my metabolism would get good from being at a calorie deficit and being super lean and muscular, and then I would switch it completely to like white bread, Nutella, and marshmallows, food that would just like
Wow.
metabolize instantly,
Mm.
would weigh nothing. And to be honest, that's how I'd lose the extra 1.5 kilos. So I would I would be motivated to be on this ridiculous diet for however long leading up to those days, and then like a few days before the comp, I'd be fucking having a marshmallow every hour, feeling good, because I've only had like
It didn't fuck with your digestion too much?
nah, like I'd have like Metamucil and shit just to fucking clear my guts, you know. Well, just because it's a like just to avoid having to water load. I know some people like water loading. I'm not the biggest fan. I think it's really dangerous having to be dehydrated 5 minutes before you fight.
Well, I'm confused then because what does the water loading have to do with being dehydrated before the fight? Wouldn't you be more hydrated?
No, no, no. So water loading as a means to make the weight is you'd pretty much, I can't remember like the ratio of it because I never actually did it myself, but you'd be drinking a lot of water a week or two out of the comp, but like
Yeah.
way more than you need, just so your body would excrete more water and you get used to it. And then like
Okay.
48 hours
Then you'd
before
stop.
you fight, you'd stop, but your body would keep excreting the water. So you then have to fight like, so you'd weigh in and then you fight 5 minutes after, and most people would cramp up and they'd fucking lose a match because they cramped. And I'm like, well, if you just didn't do that form of like, I'd rather be at a calorie deficit and have less food, but be hydrated than not be hydrated.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think a lot of people feel like they've got no energy
Yeah.
to train unless they've had a meal. And I even used to be one of those kinds of people. And now I've sort of come to realize that, hey, it's not actually food that I need. It's probably hydration and electrolytes
Yes.
because, you know, I've kind of been explaining this to a lot of my clients recently, right? This weird concept of when you eat something, it's not in your body yet.
Oh yeah. Takes time.
Because you need to actually break down that food, absorb and assimilate the nutrients through the intestinal wall to actually get it to become energy.
Yeah.
And to be used as ATP. So you can eat a meal. That's not energy. Sure, it's maybe satiated your hunger signals, but that's not why you're feeling weak in the gym. It's probably because you're lacking electrolytes. So to the thought of, competing something like a combat sport
Oh yeah.
in a dehydrated state, like, I guess that's why the topic of weight cuts and stuff is so controversial. I mean, look at fucking Pereira, man.
He's a big guy, man.
He drops a lot of weight.
Yeah, and even Khabib and stuff, like Nurmagomedov, he used to cut, like he used to fight a lightweight, correct? And I think that's 155. He used to walk around above 200 pounds. So that is a massive fucking weight difference.
He used to always struggle a bit with his weight cuts as well.
And the thing is, though, doing a day before weigh-in,
Mm-hmm.
if it's 30 hours, 24 hours, it's a massive difference in regards to the strategy you would use to make weight versus one that's like the morning of or 5 minutes before you fight. So like I fought in Abu Dhabi, or competed in Abu Dhabi rather, and weigh-ins were about 20 hours before you have to compete. So like 4 p.m. and then you compete in the morning. So less, like 16 hours or something. And I could cut a fair amount of weight for that. That was definitely less grueling unless I stayed light for too long. Like I could hop into I actually dislike like the sauna sweats. Even though I like a sauna, I don't like cutting weight in a sauna. I think it takes quite a while. I much rather the Epsom salt bath, which is
Yeah, you
which
prefer the
is
hot bath?
well, it's a grueling maybe. So I would lose about 1.5 kilos in 10 minutes in the bath,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd hate every minute of it,
Mm-hmm.
right? But I would rather do that to lose 1.5 kilos and maybe up to half an hour for like 2 kilos, like 3 kilos, depending how much water I was retaining,
Mm-hmm.
versus like 2 hours in the sauna.
In combat sports, do you reckon they should make any changes to the weight cutting process to maybe bring the like? I mean, if we look at on the weekend, right, there was a rehydration clause in the contracts between Ryan Garcia and Javonte Davis,
Yes, yes.
and Ryan Garcia couldn't put on more than was it 10, I think it was 10 pounds.
It's to do with putting on weight.
Yeah,
That
so
one? Okay.
there was a rehydration clause where he had to weigh in, obviously, just before the fight as well, and he couldn't go above a certain amount
Okay,
of
right.
weight put back on. Like, do you think that there should be a shift because, and then just get everybody to fight at their natural weight class in good health? Like, wouldn't that give us better performances and fights anyway?
I'm not certain on that style. I know ONE FC do a hydration clause, but it's they have to be X amount hydrated X amount of weeks before. So they have like not weigh-ins, but they have like hydration kind of weigh-ins
Mm-hmm.
prior to the fight. So you know that like fighters aren't gonna die trying to make weight. They actually are hydrated
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks out, a week out. They're not just like struggling or days out rather, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that's probably maybe a better one. I actually haven't heard of the hydration clause for boxing for that one. That's interesting. Haven't had a chance to think about that, but at the end of the day, this is I guess my opinion, but if there were just more weight divisions, I think that would have a better outcome in regards to people fighting at the natural weight.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people, so I would say on average for jiu-jitsu, it's about, I think the weight divisions are every like 10%, right? But you can sit between weight divisions and then you kind of have a choice of do I go up,
That was me.
do I go down?
Mm.
I'm under the impression now that I don't mind going up, right?
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, I was kind of looking at it from the meta, all right? And the meta was like, everyone's cutting weight, so I think I should too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did feel very good at rooster weight, and I did feel strong. And there's something about cutting weight. There's something about the immersiveness of having a goal in place and doing every decision you make to achieve that goal. One is obviously to make weight, and then two is to perform.
Mm.
That is an experience that I think it's priceless. Like, I don't know if I would cut weight again because I've already experienced it over the years, but I think it's important to for everyone to try it at least once if you are into combat sports and weighing in, like just seeing how you'd go if you are in between the weight divisions. Like, right, do the cut.
Yeah, do both.
Definitely do both, but there's something about like the cut and like that. I don't know. There was something about the gruelingness that I definitely did enjoy. You know, like I kind of liked like the suffering and like the pain a little bit.
But that's
if I'm being honest.
that's a mindset that I think anybody can use, right?
Yes.
And you've got to be your own fan.
Yeah.
So like at the end of the day, you're going to be a product, and your actions, your feelings are all going to be a product of the thoughts that you're bathing in.
Yeah.
So if you're tired, you're lethargic, you can't be fucked, and that's the kind of internal dialogue that you're possessing, then yeah, it's gonna suck and it's all gonna be hard. Whereas if you are suffering, you got to G yourself up.
Yeah.
Find pleasure, find humor, find anything that you can enjoy in the process. You know, and that goes across all aspects of life. I think not just cutting weight or dieting, but just achieving hard things in general.
I think it was kind of like that main character sort of like just like mindset, you know, like I'm going to be selfish about my decisions because I am the main character in this story right now. And I'm going to do everything that I possibly can to achieve these goals. And that's why I'm always really...
But that's what I'm talking about. That's your internal dialogue.
Exactly. And that's why I think it's very like admirable to see fighters with like wives and kids and stuff have to disassociate themselves from the family to go in a fight camp to do that. I'm not sure if that's all for me. Obviously, I've never fought MMA, and it's a whole different beast in regards to like jiu-jitsu MMA. Like like differentials. I think like jiu-jitsu brings its own like dilemmas, but I think it's probably easier in regards to like the camp sort of environment to hit those goals and like whatever needs to be done for you to hit
Mhm.
those goals.
So let's give a bit of value for the audience here.
Yeah.
And because there may be people out there who just want to lose some weight in life, there may be people that are uh, early on in their competitive career, whether that be jiu-jitsu, mixed martial arts, boxing, anything that they
Yep.
need to make weight for, or they may be about to do it on their first time. What do you think would be some good advice for a little bit of a raw blueprint for someone to sort of set up a little bit of a strategy to do this without, you know, as much difficulty as what
Like the
you know what I'm
weight
saying?
loss in
Yeah,
itself.
what do you
Yeah.
think? What do you think advice we could give to the audience for a pretty staple approach to losing some weight without too much grueling and suffering? If you were to do it most intelligently, what do you think needs to be taken into consideration?
Yeah, I think you would I think in the process of losing weight without having to like for it to be too difficult, I definitely would want to say you should stick true to yourself, right? In regards to you should you shouldn't feel like you're a bad person for cutting weight, like you shouldn't feel like too moody about it. And I think confidence is quite important in regards to the people that are competing in whatever sport. I would hate for one of my students to go or be a confident individual, competent and confident, and for them to lose those two elements whilst they're effectively like depleting their body of their nutrients. I would much rather somebody fight even lighter than they are and go up the weight division, knowing that they have the confidence that they can get the job done without having to have like that suffering on their body with like with a hectic diet, if that makes sense.
Yeah, of course. Anything extreme, like we said, it's going to come with more difficulty and suffering. So that's what I'm saying. What would your nutritional sort of approach be
Right.
to do this to avoid some of the suffering? Like, how much time would you give yourself? What kind of foods and setup would you be doing? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What would your cardio regime be? Like, what's your typical approach to weight loss in what time frame with what inclusions of cardio and what other considerations are you taking into factor there?
Yeah, I think a really simple like way you can look at it was how I was looking at like for my meals. So I think like jiu-jitsu is quite an extreme thing to do, and I think doing it more than twice a day can be like can be grueling.
Mm-hmm.
But I think earning your meals, earning your meals is a good way to look at it. So I remember if let's just say I wa- is that extreme?
No, I don't know. I'm just enjoying the.
Right, right.
It's just a different thought to what I had.
So I would like walk in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
right, and then eat after that, or maybe even go for a swim, do a couple of laps, and then be like, all right, I can eat now. And then maybe like if whatever your thing was, if it was running, right, you're like, well, I want to lose some weight. I like to run. I'll eat after I do my run. You do like the primary activity before you eat,
Mm-hmm.
and then obviously keeping in regards in check what you're eating. So, am I gonna feel completely full after this meal?
Mm-hmm.
Is it gonna be painful, and could I then do other things after that meal?
Mm-hmm.
So if someone said, "Look, I have 6 weeks to lose X amount of kilos, and I want to do it in the simplest way possible,"
Mm-hmm.
right? I would probably say, wake up, don't eat. If you like coffee, drink a coffee. All right. Whenever you feel like you're ready to eat, go for a walk first. Eat your food after. Or if you want to be a little bit more hectic than that, swim some laps, hop on a bike, do that, and then eat, and then just earn your meals in that sense.
Earning your meals. Okay, interesting. And a little bit of like a intermittent fasting type approach.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I mean, if you can, like, I mean, like you mentioned in regards to if you're hungry and you feel like you need food to perform, it's not gonna, like, if you eat now and perform after, it's not gonna really do anything for it'll just, it might like mentally stimulate you and it might like hit those dopamine levels and things like that, but it's not gonna affect that performance in a positive way.
Well, no, more times than not, if you're probably taking in larger doses of carbohydrates, it's actually going to set you up poorly from a neurotransmitter point of view because that's going to make you happy and tired
Exactly. Insulin release, things like that, right?
for sure. Um, yeah, right.
What would be
Earning
your
your
kind of approach on that if someone said, I want to lose weight in like the easiest way possible? And just in regards to losing weight, not any
Yeah,
other
losing
goals.
weight, not cutting weight.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
we're looking at fat loss. All right.
Right.
So I think I'm gonna go on one here for a bit.
Go on.
We don't want to lose muscle. That is never going to be a good idea for your health or for your composition. And if you lose muscle, as I mentioned, 70% of the energy that you're going to expend for the day is going to be determined by how much muscle tissue you pretty much have.
Yeah.
So you want to protect that with everything.
Yeah.
Okay. So that comes through a combination of obviously your training, but firstly, your protein goal is number one.
Uh-huh.
Right? Every single cell in the human body, other than your red blood cells, are composed of protein. So you need to be eating enough protein. The amino acids repair the tissue. They also provide the building blocks for your neurotransmitters to be feeling good. All right? So protein has to be hit.
Uh-huh.
On top of that, we need to understand that one of the biggest things people struggle with when it comes to fat loss is hunger. Protein provides us with the greatest amount of satiety, right? Hunger is in the brain.
Like hunger management?
Yep.
You mean? Yep.
So protein gives you the greatest amount of satiety in comparison to any other macronutrient. So eating high protein, we've got another good reason to be doing so.
Yep.
A third reason on why it's really good. As I mentioned, a contributing factor to total daily energy expenditure is the thermic effect of food. So protein has the highest thermic effect of food, meaning that about 30 to 40% of the calories that we consume from protein are going to get mitigated in digestion. Whereas when you eat carbohydrates and fats, about probably 5 to 10% of those calories are going to get mitigated by digestion. Therefore, that if two people ate the exact same amount of calories, let's say 2,000, but one of those people was eating a 50% protein diet, one of them was eating a 30% protein diet, the person with the 50% protein diet would have greater energy expenditure just because of having that higher macronutrient.
Yeah.
Okay, so important factor. Then obviously carbohydrates and fats are your little variable. Okay, you need to have a little bit of fats in there to support, I guess, your hormone function particularly, and brain function, and you're going to get that if you hit. You'll get that by default, really, if you hit most of your protein goals, because proteins comes with some fat in there, and if you use a little bit of cooking oil or ghee or something of that nature, you probably can get away without having to add in too many fats. And if you're somebody who's, let's say, competing, we want to bias probably carbohydrates because that's going to be better for performance, right?
Yes.
So carbs is your variable, and that's probably... That's how you're going to play with it. It depends on what you're starting with, but I would pull the carbs out where you can and then keep the carbs a little bit higher on your training days. But at the end of the day, consistency is going to be king to that. But yeah, carbs is your variable.
Right.
So high protein, moderate fats, which will come with your protein choices, then carbohydrates is your variable. Monitor how many carbohydrates you're consuming. Weigh yourself every day, as we discussed. Take pictures once a week. If the scales are going down, great. Keep doing what you're doing. If the scales aren't going down, maybe you need to pull out a few more carbohydrates.
Right. So I think we can both agree that you have to earn your meals. Is that what you said? What you just said?
You have to earn your carbohydrates. You do not have to earn your protein.
Yeah. I guess the assumption I was making when I was talking about that is you are eating a healthy and high protein diet. But yeah, in regards to like the weight loss thing, I'm a big fan of earning the meals, and I just think it's quite a simple way to look at it.
Earning your carbohydrates, I will agree with.
We'll say earning the meals. We'll say. Should we now talk about weight gain, the more fun stuff?
Okay, yeah. Let's talk about weight gain. So weight gain's a little bit easier.
I actually find it harder.
Well, I do too. I actually hate force feeding. These days I find fat loss quite easy because my appetite's not actually that huge. If I could eat the way some of the guys that I know in the gym can eat, I would walk around at 100 kilos shredded. But
Yeah, right.
I just do not have the appetite for it. So I definitely find weight gain harder, and I think the reason I dislike that as well is because of years of force feeding, chasing that goal, eating beyond what I need to, and getting
You're sick of it.
just sick of it, you know. So, and to do that on a really, again, this depends on the person. Not everybody needs to do it, but if you're a male and you're starting to, get up around that 90 kilo, 100 kilo mark, maybe not even that high, but it's as soon as you start to surpass 3,500 calories, like that's very fucking hard to do with just purely clean foods.
Yeah, I think so I guess you could look at weight gain as well in regards to a scale, right? Like
Hmm.
you'd have your McDonald's. For me, like if you were like just
Hey,
get
that was a long time ago.
shaming.
Yeah.
Well, like for me, if you were like, look, just get as heavy as possible, man, I could fucking do that if I ate like fucking cakes and like ice cream and chocolates all day,
Hmm.
right? I could probably just get fat. It's very, very possible that I could. Would I feel good? No. Right.
Hmm.
In regards to like gaining weight healthily or in like the proper way, I think that's what I found challenging. The fact that I do jiu-jitsu most days a week, and I am also lifting weights, and having to teach in between those things means that I'm not eating or resting at the best of times for like proper weight gain, and that was the thing that I kind of struggle with the most. But if you were like have as much convenient food as possible to make the weight on the scale go up, I could do that for sure. I could do that.
Mm. And like you definitely need to use different macronutrient profiles, right? Because you might be at dinner,
Mm-hmm.
like some friends of mine, Ben Kant. I actually heard him talking about this on his podcast, and he's a super intelligent individual. He's a biochemist and works heavily in the nutritional space and
We'll have to ask
whatnot.
him about the earning your meal thing.
Mm. But he used the example that if you're at a restaurant, right, and you just had a big bowl of pasta, an Italian restaurant,
Yeah.
and then the waiter comes out and goes, "Oh man, the chef fucked up and they cooked a second pasta. Do you want the pasta?" You're probably like, "Oh no, I'm full, I'm good." But then they bring out a dessert menu. All of a sudden, you've got room for dessert.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I actually don't know like the biology or the psychology of that, but I can always eat junk food. And
Mm.
that's always been like a big vice of mine. And I don't know if that's out of like convenience, the way I was brought up, or if it's just like I have a sweet tooth and I just like eating junk food.
I'm the same. I can eat ice cream and cakes and that sort of stuff. I can put that away, no doubt. And it's interesting, right? Like my mum, I've spoken to her about it. When she was pregnant with both my sisters,
Mhm.
she never craved sweet and sugary, rich foods. She craved like savory,
Yeah.
right? But with me, quite the opposite. And when I look at my sisters, neither of them are particularly sweet tooths, but me,
You?
100%.
What's like your vice? What do you reckon you're like if there was like one poison you could have forever, what would it be?
Like a death row meal.
Sure. Sure.
Fuck, I've got some low ones, man. Like I love Dr. Pepper. I love Dr. Pepper.
That's sarsaparilla, isn't it? That's like that flavor.
It's
haven't had
medicine flavor,
Yeah, right,
like
right.
artificial cherry. So, these are the things that I like, and I'll grant myself a Dr. Pepper maybe once every 2 months. I'll have a Dr. Pepper
Yeah.
because it's just something I enjoy, and I think that's important for people to understand. Like that your health and your body composition is going to be, a byproduct of the decisions that you're making on a regular basis. That doesn't mean that you can't enjoy your life and do things from time to time, because from a caloric point of view, we want to pay more attention to what's happening over, probably a week or a month than what we are on a daily level.
Yeah.
And if we understand that 1 kilo of fat has 7,700 calories in it, then when you start to set up your nutrition from that, you should be able to predict quite accurately your rate of fat loss or fat gain.
Yeah, okay, right. I actually didn't know that 1 kilo of fat has 700 calories.
7,700 calories in it as storage.
Like your personal 1 kilo of fat has that.
Yep, has
Really?
7,700 calories of energy in it. So back to, we were talking about the process of weighing yourself every day.
Yeah.
So I have a new client, and she started with me about 2 weeks ago. Okay. And she's been doing this process, and things were trending downward. And then she goes,
Like trending downward in
in
a
a
good
good way.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
In a good way. And then she sent me a message the next morning being like, got on the scales this morning and I'm 500 grams up from my start weight. What the fuck? And then we pretty much had that conversation. Hey, these are the things that could influence
Yeah.
weight loss or weight gain. And I was like, so unless you ate 3,350 or whatever it was calories in your sleep last night, you did not put on half a kilo of fat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that is a topic I've definitely had to speak to people about in regards to when I have friends that ask me like, "Hey, I've just started to hit the gym. I'm noticing some results. I know keeping back to weight loss. It's an easier one.
It's an easier topic.
It's an easier topic. And I'll be like, well, have you tried doing this? Tried doing this? And they'll do those things, and they'll see those immediate results, and then there'll be a point where it'll go up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, well, it's very normal, especially because you're probably prepping yourself for a hard training session as well, and you're probably more hydrated than you were than when you were weighing yourself previously.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely unhealthy aspects to both weight loss and weight gain in the extreme.
Yeah.
And when you're sometimes really trying to put weight on, I don't know if I could almost argue that that's a little bit unhealthier. It's more inflammatory because of some of the dirty food choices that potentially you're having to make. And just the stress that's getting placed on your digestive system, pancreas, gallbladder, to secrete all those additional hormones, whether it be the insulin, whether it be the bile. But, things that I used to even do through that period is, I would add a lot of butter to things. I would put
honey.
I would put olive oil in my protein shakes.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, but on the scale of things, I've done way more disgusting.
But I mean, like, couldn't you add like honey and stuff instead of like olive oil?
Yeah, all of it.
You have honey and olive oil?
I'll do it all. Eating a lot of like the honey roasted macadamia nuts.
Those are pretty yummy.
They're pretty yummy, but they're very high in calories. Yeah, for sure. And then some dirty foods like some ice cream and whatever.
So in regards to, I guess, the gaining weight and the losing weight, there's also the external factors that aren't food that we haven't like spoken about, which is like under the headline of like PED, performance enhancing drugs. Even though I feel like weight loss ones probably aren't performance enhancing. Would you say like a drug like clenbuterol would be performance enhancing?
I wouldn't say that clenbuterol is performance enhancing,
Are
but
there other
caffeine
ones?
would be. Caffeine's a performance enhancer, and it's going to increase, basal metabolic rate.
So why do people use clenbuterol then?
Clenbuterol also increases basal metabolic rate. So it's not a fat burner. Like, there is nothing really that exists that is actually a true fat burner that is burning fat. Most of these supplements that claim to be fat burners are very well marketed, and just by the title you make that assumption, but most of them work by either increasing thermogenesis, so body temperature, or they increase basal metabolic rate through a stimulant effect, i.e. through caffeine. Things like your himbine green tea extract, clenbuterol, even another...
Is that the most extreme one for like weight loss?
Clenbuterol probably is, yeah.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like,
I've heard that's quite dangerous too.
It is, and you like any stimulant, you adapt to it, so you start to need more and more of it to get the same kind of effects. But nicotine's a really good one that probably doesn't get used or discussed as much. Like, of course, there's the risk factors there of becoming addicted to nicotine, and it would depend on the person and their history with smoking and stuff like that. But clenbuterol increases basal metabolic rate by, I think it's like 3% or something thereabouts. Don't quote me on that if I'm wrong. And its half-life is maybe 24 hours. I don't know. It's in the ballpark of 24 to 48 hours of what it's increasing your basal metabolic rate by. But nicotine, so 2 milligrams of nicotine will increase your basal metabolic rate by nearly double that, so about 6% for about 180 minutes.
So if you want to lose weight, let's start smoking cigarettes.
Or eat nicotine chewing gum, and it's also a nootropic, so it can actually be really good for brain function. But
nicotine can?
Yeah.
Brain function?
It's a nootropic.
Fuck, that's something that I haven't done yet.
Yeah. So, they're things that you can keep up your sleeve, but at the same time, I think when you look at, you know, your quest on fat loss, I almost feel regretful that I've even shared that, because some people are going to go do it. Like, you want to do the healthy things over as long a period as possible, and then keep these fat burners or ingredients, whether it be caffeine, whether it be green tea extract, biotin, Solasascoli, whatever it may be that you decide that you want to experiment or use. Keep those things as like a card to play up your sleeve later on when you hit periods of like plateau. Because if the body is an adaptive machine. If you throw the whole kitchen sink at everything, even from a dieting standpoint, right, is that your metabolism will adapt to whatever you're doing. So it will rise and fall and change with those caloric intake. So if you're someone whose baseline of metabolism was, let's say, 2,500 calories, and now all of a sudden you increase that to 4,000 calories, well, that was stupid. You didn't need that much of a surplus. You could have just increased that to 3,000 calories, got some weight gain, got some performance enhancement from that, got some recovery benefit from doing so with that additional. As your metabolism starts to speed up, then you can maybe jump it up another 250 to 500 calories and do it in a sort of titrated manner. In the same way with your deficits, you know, it depends on the period that you're doing it for. There's a lot of variables, you know, but the same thing goes with like with any sort of drugs or supplements that you're using. You want to get the most amount of results from the least effective dose so that you have room to move from there.
I think obviously everything you've just said makes a lot of sense if you could log everything that you had in your day. Right, but like the everyday person is maybe eating out one meal a day. Maybe I don't even know how many meals they might have in a day if they're having 2 or 3 meals. If they're having 2 meals a day and they're eating out one meal a day, it's pretty hard to gauge how many calories you're having in that given meal unless like the restaurant or whatever cafe provides like how many calories this meal is. Right, so to have like that baseline of like if like 2.5 is my norm and I want to jump to 3, kind of ballpark figures in regards to that, right?
Man, completely. And that's where you need to put your big boy pants up on and pull them up and take responsibility.
Have preparation?
It's like if you can't, I can't lose weight because I don't have the time and I have to eat at a cafe every day. Well, get a real fucking problem. Like, do you care about it that much? Like, the reality is you can't expect the results for the work that you didn't do.
Yeah, and I think like preparation is massive, right? Like, I think in like an ideal world, actually we live in a pretty ideal world, right? But if you could be bothered and it meant that much to you and you were really driven to hit your target weight or target physique, preparation becomes everything, right? If you knew exactly the amount of input you were putting into your body and you could gauge how much output was also going out, you would see results in the best possible way, I would imagine.
100%. And this brings me back to the importance of protein. Okay, because let's make this for the general population person. So the reality is you're going to have to develop some sort of nutritional literacy and get a bit of a base understanding on what is in food.
Do you think that should be taught at schools?
Yes, it definitely should be taught at schools. 100%. That's where, you know, nutritional education needs to begin because it's all habitual, but you're going to force me to digress if we go down that path. So you're going to have to track at least something, at least for a period of time. Now, do I think that the general population person is going to give a fuck enough or have the understanding where that doesn't become confusing and they just throw the baby out with the bathwater where they're trying to track every single calorie? I don't think so. But this is where I use, for a lot of people that are coming from no concept of nutrition into wanting to improve their health outcomes, is a protein point system where I would call 100 grams of protein as 4 points, and an egg is 1.
Okay.
Right? So based on that equation, I might say to you, Mikael, the only goal that you need to focus on nutritionally today at this point in time is I want you to hit 23 points.
Okay.
Right? And you can chop that up into 1 meal, 2 meals, 3 meals, 4 meals.
Or 23 eggs.
Or however the fuck you want to do it. Or 23 eggs. That's a lot of fat.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't advise doing it that way, but you get my point.
Yes.
And when you do that, you're going to, as I've discussed earlier in the podcast with the satiety mechanisms in the brain, the likelihood of you overeating if you hit your protein goal is so unrealistic.
Yeah, right.
So if you just focus on that, the body knows. The body is smart. Since we've had the ability to track and count calories, as a society, we got sicker and fatter. So it's not a perfect system, right? Obesity has only existed more as nutritionally. We've stopped eating as much animal protein. We've started eating more processed bullshit, and we're sitting down more.
All right, so I have two things to say. The first one is, in regard, like not everybody would know this, but if let's say you weighed 50 kilos, how much protein, or 100 kilos, just to make the maths easier,
Yep.
how much protein would you need to have in that day?
So the starting point for protein requirements is somewhere between 1.8 and probably 2.2 grams of protein per kilogram. So by maths purposes, let's just go in the middle of, say, about 2.
Okay.
Right? So if you're a 50-kilo person, you would be
100 grams,
aiming for about 100 grams of protein.
Yeah, nice.
And then from fats, I typically don't ever like going below 0.5, right? So if you were 100 kilos, you wouldn't want to go below 50 grams of fats. But I typically like that to be a little bit higher, somewhere probably around 0.8 to even 1. It depends on the carbohydrate intake.
Do the types of fats matter?
Well, ideally, we would like them to be healthy fats. So again, coming from either animal proteins or good sources of saturated fat, like i.e. coconut oil or ghee, olive
Avocado?
oil.
Do you like avocado?
Avocado is fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nuts in very small amounts. I typically prefer walnuts, pistachios, and
These nuts?
macadamia nuts. These nuts too. Brazil nuts are a good choice for selenium, which is going to support your thyroid hormone and testosterone. But at the same time, too many nuts can cause digestive irritability and upset for some people. And then your carbohydrates is typically, somewhere around 2 to 3 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. But that is your main variable to kind of play with. And if it's looking for, optimal hypertrophy, maybe you want to go up to sort of like,
Fuck, I love that.
you might go as high as 6 grams of carbohydrates per kilogram of body weight. But at the same
6
time,
grams?
yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot.
It is. That's a bulking sort of phase. But but at the end of the day, man, like if you're wanting to lose weight, you can quite comfortably get through the day and life without any carbohydrates in your diet. They are non-essential nutrient for life. We spoke about this.
Yeah, I was, when I would do my big weight cuts, I didn't want to say it in the podcast before in case people were like, you didn't have any carbs?
Oh, you didn't want to get judged?
I didn't want to get judged, dude. I didn't want to get judged. They want to be like, oh, he's one of those fucking keto guys. I'm not. But I would have very minimal carbs. I'd have a lot of fiber to fill me up and a lot of protein to also fill me up.
And that's how any diet works at the end of the day. Whether it be you remove carbohydrates and you become keto, you're removing an entire macronutrient. Whether you're shortening your window time of eating and doing intermittent fasting, then essentially you're cutting down the time and the rules that you've placed upon yourself of when you can consume food. And by default, it's probably harder to consume calories in that window, provided you stick to the rules that you've set on yourself.
Well, the shittest thing about not having carbs, and I guess the reason why I do have carbs now is because it's just a convenient food. Right, it's economically cheaper, it's easier to get, and it's one of those ones where it's like, I remember I'd be full from having my vegetables, my eggs, and my meat when I was cutting weight, but I'm like, fuck, I could have a fucking slice of pizza, like I could, there's always room for carbs, and that's like the strange thing that's in my life. If there was like a poison for me, I would say it'd be, I would just say like just carbs in general. I'm like a big cheese guy as well, like anything dairy, I fucking love. Anyway, we're getting sidetracked. I wanted to ask you, in regards to the foods, and you were talking about processed foods, do you have like a steak every day, personally?
Most days I will eat steak. Yeah.
Do you also eat a lot of white meat or mainly red meats?
Definitely more red meats than white meats. White meats are more of a rarity. Again, from a nutritional perspective, the nutrient density of red meat is much higher than white meats. When we look at poultry in general, chicken often gets labelled the dirty birdie because it's either been fed low quality ingredients. So one of the consequences of being at the top of the food chain is that we take on the foods that our foods ate. So when they're fed corn and grains and often fed antibiotics to keep them alive in such poor living conditions, that can sometimes be not ideal for the human body. I'm not saying it's bad by any means to, hey, avoid chicken. It's a much better dietary choice than some of the things that people are probably eating, but I definitely get more bang for buck and have a palate that prefers red meat. So I would say that I eat some form of red meat at least every day.
Yeah, to my knowledge, in regards to the meats and just like proteins in general, is in regards to the protein synthesis that your body can synthesize, I guess. Um, I wanted to speak. So we spoke about clenbuterol before. There's obviously the other spectrum of things, which is the things like steroids. I believe that adds, or like, I
Well,
guess.
clenbuterol can actually work as like a anti-catabolic, so it helps prevent muscle wastage.
Oh, really? So you can get fucking shred. I guess you would get shredded on clenbuterol, right? Because you'd be losing fat.
And it
And
helps prevent muscle protein breakdown.
so on the other end of things, if someone was to just use things like testosterone or whatever, like what name another fucking anabolic steroid?
Deca, Anavar, Tren.
Like, do those things just add to your ability to protein synthesize? Is that what it effectively does?
100%. Testosterone upregulates protein synthesis.
And is that just testosterone or all those things that are labeled as anabolic steroids?
I don't know the in-depth biochemistry of all those compounds. Haven't got enough experience with them or knowledge on them to be able to make comment. But I definitely know that testosterone will increase protein synthesis, and it's one of those things. It's one of those reasons why fat loss is probably a little bit easier for men than it is women.
Yeah, so I guess using like testosterone to, I guess, have better protein synthesis, then there are other methods to boost your testosterone. There's obviously like there's supplements like the Tonkat Ali, which is like I think yam or some shit, and then there's also having like cold showers in the morning, things like that, right?
Yep.
Would those are those things you think beneficial if someone said, "Hey Jack, I've got a goal. I want to gain some weight or at least lose fat and gain muscle." Would you like recommend those things for them?
Man, fuck.
Are those the 1%ers? Are those the 1%ers? Is everything else?
No, I just think there's a hierarchy.
Okay.
Right? There's an order. Like I got a message from I literally put up that video last night on my social media about waking up with a boner and that being a good sign of, hormonal balance and things being where they should be. And off the back of that, I had somebody send me a inbox concerned because their partner had been talking about a desire to start taking testosterone, but the message started, he's just started going to the gym and he's considering like taking testosterone. So I was like, and I see this really commonly, over the last 15 years, spending time in gyms is people that are out, they're party boys and they're on the gear every weekend and stuff like that, but they're also taking testosterone. It's like you train like shit, your nutrition is like shit, and you're trying to make up for that by getting on exogenous hormones. Now, is it going to help? Sure. But the reality is those people that I'm talking about still look like shit. And there's a little bit of a misunderstanding, I think, sometimes about this topic, because if we look at Ronnie Coleman or Kai Green, right, some of the best, biggest bodybuilders that we've ever seen in the world, it needs to be understood that they are genetic freaks and they also put in the work. Because you look at them when they were 17, they look better than what I would right now if I jumped on twice the amount of gear as what they were on, right? So there's a huge genetic factor there, which I think contributes to that sort of image that has been conjured up. But, there are so many things, as to your question, that you can be doing to improve your hormonal profiles more naturally before jumping on exogenous hormones. And I think that's more relevant now than it ever has been, because we really are seeing an epidemic of low testosterone and low fertility amongst men. And the things that are, if we try and simplify this in a way, is you're either building sex hormones or you're building stress hormones, right? They both start from the same thing, except enzymatically, it's a lot more pathways to create testosterone than it is cortisol. So the number one thing that's going to be tanking your testosterone is an elevated amount of stress. Now, what does that umbrella of stress consist of? Well, that is, are you getting enough sleep? That's probably the biggest one. We know that one night's dysfunctional sleep, which is considered 6 hours or less, will halve a man's testosterone the day after. So are you sleeping 7+ hours consistently? Are you walking around with your phone in your pocket permanently? There is more and more starting to come to the surface about electromagnetic fields and the negative impact that is having on the testes.
Yeah.
Same could be said with working with your laptop on your waist. And I think that's where the ice bars and my good friend Lucas Owen, who is, I guess, a biohacker, he's an advocate for actually icing your balls.
Oh no, dude. So fucking Jordan from the gym.
Yeah.
Probably like a year and a half ago, he was like, I was like, man, I'm gonna try and gain some weight. So he was like, have you tried icing your balls? And I'm like, I'm not gonna ice my balls
Why not?
because he could have just been fucking with me.
So you just didn't trust him. That was the problem.
No, but
Fair enough.
that's a good way to fuck with somebody though. If you're like, bro, have you tried icing your balls? They're like, no, I haven't. They're like, yeah, you should try it.
What do you know? Jordan is actually turns out to be a better person than what we've given him credit for. He was actually trying to help you out.
He was like, I iced him 10 minutes every day. I was like, unless you like send me a photo of you icing, I'm not gonna fucking believe you, bro.
Yeah. So icing your balls could help. You mentioned some supplements like Tonga Ali. There is, recently they've been talking about Turkestone.
I don't even know what the fuck Turkestan is.
Yeah, I don't know much about it either. I just heard it sort of come to the surface in other sort of conversations and studies more recently. Even if you look at your blood panel, right, and you might have really high SHBG, so sex hormone binding globulin. So if that's really high, basically your free testosterone may be low. Okay, so that your free testosterone is what we want to be available for use, right?
What do you mean by free testosterone? Sorry.
Well, because you've got two different testosterone labs, right?
Okay.
And then your free testosterone may be low because SHBG is really high. So things
It's like a balancing act?
Yep. So
Yeah.
if you can lower SHBG, which you can do with maybe the help of, let's say, stinging nettle root or boron, that can often free up more of your testosterone that is currently bound, and now you will get the performance benefits of higher testosterone.
How about things like just having more sex and things like that? Does that affect that, like those levels?
I don't know if having sex actually boosts testosterone, but I think that there's some cool studies out there to show that men who have sex at least once a week, I think, typically live for much longer than those that only have sex, let's say, once a month.
What about just in regards to ejaculating regularly?
Oh, because there's been quite a bit of popularity lately over like withholding.
Yeah,
What do they call it? Like,
I actually don't know what it's called, but I remember the first time I heard about it was in year 12, and I had friends that were on like the first 8 rowing team, and all of them didn't fucking jerk it for like 10 days before like their big race, and I thought it was the weirdest thing ever. And I think like the whole concept behind it was they wouldn't jerk it for like 10 days, and then like before the race they'd fucking get a boner, or like they take themselves to the brink, and then they try and fucking have the urge to pull a little bit harder on the boat. I don't know.
How many of them do you reckon actually got themselves to the brink and didn't actually hold off?
I'll have to send out some messages after this and get some honest replies.
Yeah, just be like, okay, now that it's 10 years after the fact, tell me the truth.
We're like, did you fucking bust the load or what, dude?
Oh, fuck. Well, on that note, I reckon we probably wrap that up. That's been pretty detailed. But guys, drop some comments in below if you have any questions or or any feedback for us. And we will see you next time.
We'll see you next time, team. Cheers.
Thank you, guys.